Welcome back to the Birds on Powerlines podcast. In this episode, we're talking about the Doctor Who 60th anniversary special, which we absolutely love. We ended up being so enthralled with the story that for this episode, as well as the next ones, we're actually going to talk about each part of the anniversary specials. But we're going to break with convention and do it in reverse order. So yes, there absolutely will be spoilers. Going backwards then, we're starting here with The Giggle. And we had so much to talk about with the story arc and bigeneration that we actually will have 2 podcasts on part 3. We hope you enjoy listening to this first part of our collection of musings on The Giggle. So, Doctor Who. I've really enjoyed watching these 3 60th anniversary specials. It's just been quite a fun experience, and it was just great sharing it with you because we were both kind of watching it and being so excited and reacting together. It was really a riot. But I honestly, this last one, and just the anticipation of losing something that you essentially never had, right? We were talking about that, and we were so worried and excited to watch it, but also not wanting to see it because we're thinking, oh, we're going to lose this wonderful thing that we have. And I think that the reason we felt that way is because we've been watching all of these regenerations, and it's always been kind of a sad thing. And then when it didn't happen that way, it was just like, what? And then this really happy feeling that you're not losing something, and it doesn't have to be sad, and it's actually building on something new. It's just really cool. And now we've got potentially many more storylines that we can see, and this new Doctor doesn't seem to be impeded by all of the bad stuff that has happened to the Doctor. He seems to be so optimistic and joyous, and I just and then having such a happy ending for a Doctor who was obviously traumatized. I just think it's just really, really just a great kind of feeling. So what do we do? I think we should, reflect on each of these episodes on their own. I think we should watch them again, but I don't know. Let's maybe just have our impressions for this last one, because there's so much to talk about. I mean, the Toymaker and all the things that happened, even aside from, the change and the regeneration, what happened there, and the splitting of the Doctors. But there's so much other stuff that to talk about in that episode. I just think it's worth just thinking about it, and really I think that this, because I used to see the beginnings of Doctor Who when I was little, and I'm telling you, this is not your granddad's Doctor Who, and I think this is a good thing, right? Because young people are not like we were when I was young, or obviously people who are older than me used to watch this, and um young people aren't attracted by the same stuff that people of earlier generations was. And I think that for Doctor Who to keep moving and pushing the envelope forward, it's gotta bring in the new audiences as well, and the younger people. And I think, whatever, Doctor Who is still going to just keep on being as weird and terrifying and funny and exciting as it always has been. And I think that this is, and it's always been about embracing change. So I think that this is a change that, I mean, I love it. I'm really excited about it, but I can just see online, there's some people that are like, well, this is not the way it's always been. And then at the same time, we have to embrace change. I don't know, but younger audiences are not nearly as bothered by things that older audiences are. I mean, you guys are all wired differently. You're connected differently, and therefore the show also has to evolve. And I think this is really exciting, and I'm really looking forward to the Christmas special. But yeah, let's think about this and reflect on all the weirdness that there was in the amazing stuff that we were seeing.
Yeah, I personally think that the new direction that they're taking this in with like a whole, like a much happier, more free appearing doctor right now, I think that is definitely a step in the right direction. I personally do like how the 60th anniversary specials, especially, have, and but like Doctor Who the past like little bit, the past like few years and such, how like it's changed with the times and it's gotten more modern and more like different themes have been presented in it that weren't like in like the original run or even like the earlier 2000s. And I think it's a sign that like times are changing and people in general want to see and want to get different things out of the shows that they watch. And I think especially right now with all of the emphasis like being placed on mental health and like the visibility around mental health, especially in like media and sports, all that other stuff. I think it's very important that like such a show with such a wide following like Doctor Who really like took the time to address the fact that like sometimes the most healthy thing is to take a step back and really just try and like heal from the things that you're going through. I mean, I know especially me, like I really I mean, my life is pretty okay, but I do have a lot of struggles with like anxiety and getting overwhelmed. Um, and I think that seeing that in something that I'm watching, like it's okay to take a step back. It's okay to take time for yourself, and you don't have to keep like charging ahead without like really taking time to reflect on like what am I doing or why am I doing this. I think seeing that on screen really was meaningful, and I'm sure I'm not the only person who feels that way. And I know especially like a lot of the themes addressed in like really all three of the episodes, but really the last episode, the with the Toymaker and him, like his whole thing about, oh, humans are so like easy to like manipulate and all that stuff, but because they're so like apt to jump to conclusions and like completely like always have to be right. Everything's like all these little games that we play with each other, for better or worse. I think that really definitely in today into like to today's audience, it definitely strikes a chord that wouldn't have really that it this now is the right time to be like sending that message. What are we doing? We should, and then both with the whole like toy maker shtick and like the fact that like the 14th Doctor needed to take time to heal from all this other stuff that happened to him. I think that both of those messages kind of result in really we should take a step back and look at what we're doing and think like people as a whole and individuals, am I doing the right thing by just going forward without really thinking of what, like really taking time to process what is going on in my life. And on a bit of a lighter note, since David Tennant was in both Good Omens and Doctor Who, usually if David Tennant is offering to like go off to the stars and do all this fun stuff and you refuse, it doesn't usually end well. That's just some little pattern that I noticed. But based on the trailer specifically for the Christmas special that's supposed to happen sometime soon, with the 15th Doctor, based on the episode or based on the trailer for that, I think Doctor Who is definitely going to be going in a different direction. I mean, granted, neither of us have really been in the fandom like at all, but from the little bit of research that we've been doing, it's definitely going to go in a different direction, for better or worse. I think for the better, but we'll see. different direction, as in more, probably more of what the 60th anniversary did, by like exploring these more like nuanced themes that are more relevant to today's society, and in a more like overt way than the show had in the past, because it has, as far as I know, always been doing something of a similar manner, but now I think Russell T Davies is definitely pushing the envelope and trying to really investigate and like make make a mirror back to like people, our today's society, like across the world. And he's trying to kind of force us to take a hard look at ourselves and really confront, if we don't like what we see, what are we going to do about that? And I know it's said that imitation is the highest form of flattery. So since this media, the Doctor Who, is almost imitating real life by like copying the patterns that we see in real life, but putting it into a fictional setting with fictional characters, fictional events, but something that clearly does echo real life. Why is this something that we need to hear much clearer now than it has been, than the show has been doing in the past? But definitely, I feel like this new phase in Doctor Who is definitely trying to connect more to the audience that's watching it, and both to its audience and to maybe a broader audience, connects more deeply to them on like a more personal level, something that they can see themselves in, instead of just a fun adventure about really sometimes scary topics and sometimes terrifying aliens and with crazy villains and all that stuff. But yeah, I'm really excited to see where this is going to go in the future. And overall, even though the Giggle wasn't my favorite out of the three, that was Wild Blue Yonder, that was my favorite. I do think it has a lot of themes that we can definitely, like, as in general, people can definitely take a look at and really think about, let it percolate in our minds.
I think those are all really great points. And regardless, I think we agree that, at least from our sort of novice perspective, that I think we're all in. And yes, we love David Tennant. And I think that was a big thing that brought a lot of new viewers in with the 60th anniversary. In addition to that being on Disney, but so that we could all watch it much more easily. At least if you have Disney, but it brought in that audience. But those people that would be watching, say, Good Omens, right? They already know David Tennant, and this would also bring them in. So I think that this brought in a whole new audience. And then, as you know, as an actor, I just admire his skill. Like, I mean, I think he's amazing. And aside from that, I know that his love of Shakespeare and his fabulous ability to do that has brought new younger people into liking Shakespeare as well, which I think is an added bonus. So I think there's the Tenant effect here is a spillover thing. And whether people like it or not, I mean, like we were saying, there's new people, and people love different things. And I think that's, again, one of the amazing things about Doctor Who and Russell Davies. He's just amazing at doing this. So then, on that note, with his storyline, with the regeneration of number 14, or the bigeneration, or the bi-regeneration, or whatever, whatever the implications are in terms of the hints and the storyline, and time loops and all of these other things, and what that all might mean in the future when 14 regenerates, as you regenerate to 15, and this is like some sort of time loop, or if it's not a time loop. I don't know why we can't just enjoy this. From my perspective, right now we have two doctors. And I think what we can agree is that 14 has pulled all of the trauma of the doctor's losses in his life, and has made it possible for to uplift the spirit of the doctor, I guess we could say it that way. And, he can now just move forward and enjoy and be who he is. And I think that is an important thing, like you were addressing in your thoughts about mental health. And yeah, like he honestly, if you think about all of that, and that's what was done so well in the giggle, right? I mean, let's talk about this, because honestly, I think this was fabulous. I know Wild Blue Yonder is great, and I don't know which one is my favorite out of these three. Um, but like you were saying, like when it comes to um, Neil Patrick Harris coming in as the toy maker, and I'll admit I didn't see the other toy makers, but his announcement, or his revealing of himself, I guess, with that dance at the unit to spice up your life. And I believe you agree with me on this. It's got to be one of the most epic appearances by a villain ever. I think you even said that. And the fact that many lost their lives in that scene, uh, when he was having the time of his life, was just showing the pure evil that was there. I just, honestly, and wow, I was just completely blown away by that. But another note in the giggle, like right before that, when the Doctor and Donna came back to the unit, I'm still a little confused as to what was on that flash drive, and that whole thing, and I felt that was a little quick. Um, so I'd like to go back to that. I know we've watched it twice now, but I still want to just sort of look at that. I think I get it, but they kind of like dropped that when Neil Patrick Harris appeared as the toy maker, and it just seemed to end. They dropped that line of thought that they were on. So I think they were just trying to prevent him from ever coming into the universe. But obviously it was too late. But maybe that's what they were going with that. But really, on the other hand, looking at the scenes, right? I want to go back to Soho, right? And when Donna and the Doctor were trapped in the toy maker's realm there. I mean, that was intense. And the in particular scene I want to go back to is the one where he was doing the puppet play to summarize the Doctor's life for Donna, so that she would know what was going on. And I think that in my mind, this goes back to that mental health idea, right? Because I know when you were watching it, you were a little bit confused when, and I don't know if you still are, but I know when we were watching it, you're like, why is he doing that? So, when he slipped back into the American accent after he snipped the connections between the puppets of all the different companions when they died. And he said, well, that's all right then, right? And the reason he said that was after they passed away in his play, then the Doctor said, yes, but, and he was mocking him, right? That's what I think is happening here. So, and I think maybe since you're still so young, you haven't gone through things that you look back on and you think, if I had only done things differently, the result would be different. And then you regret, and then you doubt yourself, and you worry. And, and it's such high stakes with the Doctor. And he's like, well, but her consciousness was uploaded, and yes, this, and this was him trying to heal himself, right? He was trying to make things okay in his mind, and the toy maker just fed right into that, knowing that the Doctor is struggling with this, and making fun of him, right? Essentially saying, well, that's all right then, right? And mocking him. And I think I was so moved by that, and it was actually heartbreaking. And to me, the only way that he could make the toy maker stop is when he jumped up and he says, okay, I challenge you to a game. And that was how he made it stop. And knowing that perhaps this might be the end of him, right? Just to make that pain stop. Um, at least that's how I saw it. And this is, to me, one of four epic scenes in the toy maker's realm, right? The other one being that heartbreaking interaction between the Doctor and Donna, and then the other one being with the apprentice, or the helper who became the marionette, and what that all meant, and his face going in place of the other guy's, meaning the Doctor's face. And then of course Donna dealing with the wife puppet and the baby puppets. Man, those like all of these were so intense. Just thinking about it gives me chills. So yeah, we've got a lot to talk about, and never mind what was going on at the unit, and then the toy maker dancing in the streets when things were going amiss. Like, yeah, so much to talk about, but right now those are my thoughts.
Yeah, about the flash drive, I think it was some kind of like sci-fi antivirus software that tried to purge all the Stooky Bow recordings from all of the computers and screens and whatnot. And I think it also might have been to try and fight the effects of the Giggle, or like reverse it and try and prevent the toy maker from like showing up in the present. But I'm not entirely sure what it was either. We're gonna definitely have to rewatch that. But the puppet play also would be worth a rewatch. Maybe after we're able to watch the context of like the original toy maker and the original doctor when they were fighting. That's definitely something we'll have to get back to as well. And the whole thing with like also during the puppet play with his like with the toy maker changing his accents. I looked into it a little bit, and I think that the way that the original Doctor defeated the Toymaker was by like mimicking him, mimicking his voice. But again, we're probably gonna have to rewatch, or not rewatch. We're probably gonna have to find like that scene, like I don't know, on YouTube somewhere. I'm sure that exists, and look into that, because like we really are kind of at a disadvantage in that we are pretty much entirely new to this whole thing. So there's a lot of things in here for like older fans, because like it's like the anniversary specials and stuff. So, and we're not really older fans. um but um going back to what you said about like, I mean, about the fact that the doctor like was feeling a lot of like regret and such. I mean, yes, I am a bit young, so I probably don't understand exactly all of the stuff that he was feeling, but I think that also circles back to the all the healing that was going on during that episode, and like how like it is important to like take the time to forgive yourself for the things that you did in the past that maybe now that you're older you would have done something different, or you would have tried to avoid the situation altogether. um but I mean, yes, I am young, but but I do think everyone does feel like that to a certain extent. Though, of course, if you've lived what 900 plus years, you definitely would feel like that more than someone who's as young as I am. But I also feel that the entire episode, the entire like giggle, is a very like direct commentary, not only on healing and self-love, but also like the state of society today. Because essentially, like in this episode and in real life, the world is kind of a total mess, and no one's really willing to listen to anyone. And a lot of people have essentially like given up caring, which I'm thinking like might be part of the reason why like everyone was so like susceptible to like the giggle, like all the humans, everyone was. Whereas like people who had an outside perspective, like the doctor or the Blinks, weren't affected because first of all like they weren't like they didn't grow up in this environment where like the screens are everywhere and like they're always hearing the giggle. They didn't grow up in that, but also because they have an outside perspective and they're able to like see things much more clearly than people like the humans who are living on Earth, like in their global society. um but especially with the toy maker, like going back to that whole like drawing connections between like the episode and real life. With the toy maker, like a lot of people who were causing these problems are often content to like just keep on chugging along and becoming like hyper fixated on like certain goals that they have personally. So like, for example, the doctor offered to the toy maker to like, hey, we can go like play games in the stars and whatnot, just leave all this behind and stop like mind controlling the humans. But he refused to do that. But then again, I do also feel like like this same like school of thought could be applied to like the people who are trying to fix things, like the doctor, because he he wouldn't stop trying to fix things. So I think more so than just healing and coping, like in like that simple simple way, I think that this episode really puts a focus on seeing the whole big picture, like zooming out from a more like egocentric point of view to focus on not like how the world impacts you, but on how you impact the world. I think there's a lot that we could learn from that, like in general. But yeah, I definitely think during the marionette show when the Toymaker was mocking the doctor almost, I think that part of why the doctor was so insistent on like trying to justify what he did was also because of the fact that Donna was there with him, and that maybe he hadn't entirely made peace with what he had done to himself, but he definitely didn't want Donna to think any less of him or to think any differently about him, which really just shows how important she is to him and how important her opinion of him is. And speaking of marionettes, in the scene with John Logie Baird's assistant and the doctor, well, I wasn't as personally freaked out by that one than I was with the one with Donna and Stooky Sue. That scene, I think, really definitely we saw the doctor very freaked out, maybe not quite as freaked out as he was when he was actually directly confronting the Toymaker, but definitely I think he definitely was very like very nervous, very like on edge during that entire interaction. And I think especially after the Toymaker did that weird stuff and turned the assistant into like a representation of the doctor himself, as a marionette, I think he definitely got much more like very like not uneasy after that interaction. And I think that part of the reason why that may have happened was because the doctor, like we already established that he doesn't like feeling like tied down. He wants to just keep moving, keep going. And I would assume with that he also wouldn't really like to feel like under control of someone or something. He really values his freedom. He values his ability to go wherever, do things, fix things. And I think he feels that if he loses to the Toymaker, then he'll be trapped, like stuck forever in something that he can't control. And I think that he, in a way, is a bit worried of what will happen if he does like lose control over all of these aspects of his life and everything catching up to him eventually. And that really that really struck something like when I was watching it, like, and I really felt that like personally as someone who like really is worried about the future in general, that really hit home for me when I was watching that. But I don't know how you read that whole interaction, but that's how I read it, and it really really spoke to something.
Thanks for listening to the first installment of our thoughts on Part 3 of the Doctor Who 60th Anniversary Special. I hope you listen to the next podcast to hear more of what excited us about the Giggle. And as always, please let us know what you thought. Thanks for listening and being part of the Birds on Power Lines podcast.